Hello, my name is Justin Carver. As part of the front-end web development track at Code Louisville, I built a personal portfolio website at justcarver.com. Let's take a look at the code.
First, let's open up my project in Google Chrome. Welcome to my personal portfolio website, currently hosted at justcarver.com. Here you see the basic structure of the entire site, a header with some navigation, the main body content, as well as a footer. The site is designed to be fully responsive, looking good at desktop views, as well as on mobile. Let's take a look at this lights out style game. This uses jQuery to manipulate the DOM to replicate the old 90s handheld electronic game Lights Out. It keeps track of your score, as well as allows you to start a new game. When you win, it congratulates you, gives you your score, and prompts you for a new game. In the About section, you'll see a widget. It starts off with a loading animation, as it makes an AJAX request to the Treehouse API and pulls my stats from their learning platform. Over here, you see a blurb with some information about myself, as well as my progress through the Code Louisville program. Let's take a look at the code in Atom. Here you'll see my gulp file. I am currently using the gulp build system to automate various functions that I used while building the website. A couple of the big ones that I'm using is I'm using gulp to minify both my CSS and my JavaScript files, reducing file size of the end site on the server, as well as reducing the load times for the end user. I am also using gulp to handle compiling my Sass documents into regular CSS. By using the Sass CSS preprocessor, I can use various features that are not normally available in normal CSS. I'll get into more detail about that in a second. Here you'll see my basic HTML structure. I have my head section with some meta tags and a link to a single CSS file. The meta tags are mainly used for the responsiveness of the website. And by linking to a single CSS file, I'm reducing my HTTP requests to the server. This also helps increase the speed of the site when the end user is trying to view it. We have a header, we have some navigation, the main body, and a footer. Let's look at the style.scss file. In this file, I start by importing a normalize.scss. The normalize file is designed to reset the browser default stylings for various browsers into a common base. I'm importing it here because when it is compiled into regular CSS, it gets compiled into a single file. This reduces the HTTP requests to the server the end user makes when they load the site. Following that, we have the various variables for the colors of the site. If I change a color here, for this primary background, that color gets changed everywhere it's used in the file. I'm using nesting to divide up a lot of the sections of the CSS. So here we have the basic body for everything, followed by the basic styles for the header section, including the navigation. We then have the main body section. Now following the main body section is the CSS for the Treehouse pie widget. This is the sizes of the pie. We use a little bit of math to figure out how to make the inner circle. And we have the CSS for the loading animation. That animation is handled completely through CSS animations. We then have the CSS for the footer, as well as the two media queries. I'm doing media queries for 400 pixels and 800 pixels, because those are the points at which the site layout tends to break down. By doing it here, I ensure that it looks good and accurate at all screen sizes. If we go over to the lights out HTML, you'll see a few specific points. We have the score area that includes the new game button as well as the actual score display. We have the winning message, which starts off as hidden, as well as all the buttons. When I am including JavaScript in the page, I'm including the script tags at the very bottom as part of best practices and also to help with loading the site quicker. I'm also linking to the CDN of jQuery instead of hosting it locally, so that if the user happens to have that cached, it loads quicker as well. If we hop over into the game JavaScript, we start with a document ready functions to make sure that none of this runs until the page has fully loaded, with some various variables for counting things. We have a function for switching whether a box is selected or not. This function just updates the score to the actual number of clicks so far. I have a random number generator. Here, to seed the game, we loop through a random number of times to turn on a random number of boxes between 15 and 20. And then we turn those boxes on or off as needed. This function merely checks to see if all the lights are off, and if it is, it makes the win message show. Here is where we call the start game function. This merely monitors the new game button for a click, and if it clicks it, it resets the game. When any of the other buttons are clicked, we have some JavaScript to get the class. We then figure out what row it was in, what column it was in, and then from there we switch that box and the 4 boxes right next to it. It then updates the number of clicks, checks to see if it wins, and if it doesn't win, you just keep going. That is the entire JavaScript for the entire game. So now let's look over here at the About page. On the About page, you'll see the HTML for the Treehouse widget, which is very basic. Most of the content is handled in the Treehouse JavaScript. Here is where we get the AJAX call with the callback function. We then declare some variables for different parts of the AJAX call that we can work with a little better. Here we put the total onto the page. Here we compensate for the fact that the total points that Treehouse gives you include certain things that are not defined by categories. This merely makes the pie complete. And then here we loop through the points object that gets returned and then creates a slice for each object. We then update the legend and hide the loading. And that's my site.
My next steps for my project include fleshing out the content in the various sections of the site, particularly the project section. I have a few projects that I'm currently working on, and when they're completed, I plan on adding them to the site. What I'm hoping to get out of this is to get a job using my new front-end web development skills And in the meantime, I also plan on continuing my education as part of Code Louisville, and I have enrolled in the back-end web development course. My name is Justin Carver, and thank you for watching.